I am so sorry. I got pulled into a last-minute meeting with the Henderson Group. It just ran over. Grab a taxi, and I will make it up to you tonight. I promise. That is what he said on the phone. He said it while standing in the same airport terminal, 20 meters behind her, loading matching luggage into the back of their family SUV with his mother, his sister, and their 3 kids. They were all wearing resort clothes. The children had backpacks with cartoon characters on them. His mother was holding a boarding pass and laughing at something his sister said. They were going on vacation, a family vacation. And the only member of the family who was not invited was the woman who had packed every single one of those suitcases, booked every single one of those tickets in the past, and kept every single detail of that household running for 9 years without a single word of thanks. She was standing in the arrivals hall with her own suitcase, the olive green one with a leather tag she had bought herself 3 years ago, watching her entire marriage collapse into a single image. And she did not cry. She took a photograph. Then she put the phone in her bag, walked to the taxi rank, and went home to a house that smelled like someone else's perfume and an emptied closet where her husband's vacation clothes used to hang. But I'm not starting there. I'm going back. Because you need to understand exactly what she built before you can understand what happened when she stopped building it. Part 1. The Architect. Elena Caldwell married Robert Hale when she was 26 years old. She was working as a junior project coordinator at a logistics firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was good at her job. She was the kind of person who arrived early, stayed late, and fixed problems before anyone knew the problems existed. Her supervisor once told her she had a gift for making chaos disappear. Elena smiled and said thank you, and did not mention that she had been making chaos disappear since she was 11 years old. When her father left and her mother started working double shifts at the hospital, and Elena became the person who packed lunches, signed permission slips, checked the homework, locked the doors, and made sure her younger brother Marcus had breakfast before the school bus arrived. She met Robert at a friend's engagement party. He was tall, square-jawed, confident in the way that men are confident when they have never had to be competent. He had a firm handshake and a wide smile and an entry-level position at a commercial real estate firm that he described as being in acquisitions, which made it sound more important than it was. He told Elena she was the most put-together woman he had ever met. He said it like a compliment. He meant like a shopping list. They married 14 months later. Small ceremony. 80 guests. Elena organized every detail. The seating chart, the caterer, the flowers, the photographer, the playlist, the hotel block for out-of-town guests. Robert's contribution was choosing his own suit and showing up on time. He did both. The first 2 years were fine. Not extraordinary. Fine. Robert brought flowers on anniversaries. Elena cooked dinner most nights. They split the bills roughly down the middle, though Elena quietly covered the difference whenever Robert's spending outpaced his income, which was often. She did not mention it. She adjusted. She always adjusted. By year 3, Elena had been promoted twice. Robert had not. His firm had gone through restructuring, and while he kept his position, his confidence took a hit that he wore like a bruise he could not stop touching. He became irritable about small things. The way Elena organized the kitchen. The way she reminded him about the car insurance renewal. The way she had opinions about their finances that he interpreted as criticism. You do not have to manage everything, Elena, he said one evening after she mentioned that the mortgage payment date had shifted and they needed to update the auto draft. I am not managing everything, she said. I am telling you about a payment date. It feels like managing, he said. It feels like you think I cannot handle things. She looked at him. She wanted to say that she did not think he could not handle things. She thought he would not handle things. There was a difference. But she did not say it because she loved him and because love makes diplomats out of women who should have been generals. She stopped mentioning the payment dates. She simply handled them. She handled the mortgage, the utilities, the car insurance, the home insurance, the property tax, the lawn service, the pest control, the annual furnace inspection, the quarterly gutter cleaning, the veterinarian appointments for their dog, a golden retriever named Birdie that Robert had wanted, and Elena fed and walked and bathed and took to every single checkup. She handled the grocery shopping, the meal planning, the holiday cards, the birthday gifts for his family, the RSVPs, the school research when they started talking about children, the retirement account contributions, the password management picture of a life that looked effortless from the outside because someone was making enormous effort on the inside. Robert never asked how any of it worked. He simply lived inside the result. And when the result was smooth and seamless and perfectly maintained, he called it normal. When the effort behind it occasionally became visible, when Elena reminded him about a bill, or asked him to handle a repair, or suggested they sit down and review the budget, he called it controlling. The word landed on Elena like a stone dropped from a height. Controlling. She was not controlling. She was load-bearing. She was the beam running underneath the floor that nobody sees until it cracks. And Robert was standing on that beam every single day, complaining about the sound it made while holding his weight. Part 2. The family. Robert's mother, Linda, was the kind of woman who smiled while she cut you. She had a voice like warm honey and a habit of making observations that sounded like compliments until you replayed them in your head an hour later and realized you had been insulted. She visited every other month. Elena cooked for these visits. She cleaned the house, bought fresh flowers for the guest room, stocked Linda's preferred brand of sparkling water, and made sure the towels in the guest bathroom were the thick white ones Linda had once mentioned she liked. Linda never acknowledged any of this. She walked through the house the way a building inspector walks through a property, looking for flaws, noting what could be improved. Never home, Elena, Linda said once, early in the marriage. Then she paused and added, Robert's last girlfriend was more of a career woman, but there is nothing wrong with being domestic. Elena was a career woman. She was earning more than Robert at the time. She did not correct Linda. She smiled and offered more sparkling water. Robert's younger sister, Courtney, was 28, unmarried, and operated on the assumption that her brother's household existed for her entertainment and convenience. She arrived unannounced on weekends, stayed for dinner without offering to help, borrowed things without asking, and referred to Elena as Queen in a tone that was not quite mocking, but was never quite sincere. Oh, Queen Elena has the house looking perfect again, Courtney would say, walking through the door and dropping her jacket on the couch Elena had just straightened. I do not know how you do it. Elena knew exactly how she did it. She did it by doing it. Every single day. Without recognition. Without assistance. Without anyone once asking if she needed help. The real exclusion started in year 5. It began subtly. A group text about Thanksgiving plans that Elena was not added to. A birthday dinner for Linda at a restaurant that Elena learned about from Robert the night before, after the reservation had already been made. A conversation at the dinner table that stopped when Elena walked into the room, followed by Linda's smooth pivot to something harmless. We were just talking about family things, Linda would say. You know how it is. Elena didn't know how it was. She knew she was being edged out of a family she had spent 5 years serving. She knew that her labor was welcome, but her presence was optional. She knew that when Linda said family things, she meant things that did not include Elena. She brought it up to Robert once, carefully, without accusation. I feel like I'm being left out of conversations, she said. It is happening more often, and I want to understand why. Robert looked at her the way he always looked at her when she raised something uncomfortable, like she had handed him a package he did not want to open. You are being sensitive, Elena. That is just how my family is. They do not mean anything by it. I'm not being sensitive. I am telling you what I am experiencing. And I am telling you it is in your head. Can we not do this tonight? They did not do it that night, or any night after. Elena stopped bringing it up. She absorbed it the way she absorbed everything else. Quietly, completely, like a sponge that nobody notices until it is full. Part 3. The morning at the airport. Elena had been away for 12 days. A professional development conference in Denver. 12 days of workshops and networking sessions in hotel rooms with stiff pillows and room service coffee that was never quite hot enough. She had called Robert every evening. He had answered most of the time. He sounded fine, normal, distracted in the way he was always distracted, like he was listening to her with one ear while the other ear tracked something more interesting across the room. On the last night, she called to confirm her arrival time. My flight lands at 2:15 tomorrow, she said. Terminal B. I will be there, Robert said. Cannot wait to have you home. She believed him. Her flight landed 12 minutes early. She collected her suitcase from the carousel, the olive green one with the leather tag, and walked toward the arrival's exit. She called Robert. He answered on the second ring. His voice was warm and slightly breathless. The voice of a man who was performing an emotion rather than feeling one. Baby, I am so sorry. I got pulled into a last-minute meeting with the Henderson Group. It just ran over. I'm still at the office. Grab a taxi, and I will make it up to you tonight. I promise. Elena stood in the middle of the arrivals hall. People moved around her. The automatic doors ahead opened and closed. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and weak coffee from the stand near the exit. You said you would be here, she said. I know, and I feel terrible. But this Henderson thing, it just came out of nowhere. 20 minutes in a cab. You will be home before me. Okay, Elena said. She hung up. She slid the phone in her coat pocket and began walking toward the taxi rank on the far side of the terminal. Then she stopped. It was the jacket she noticed first. The dark green field jacket with the elbow patches. She had bought it for him for Christmas 2 years ago. He was wearing it now, walking through the departures concourse on the opposite side of the glass partition, his hands in his pockets, his stride loose and unhurried. Not the walk of a man stuck in a meeting. The walk of a man on his way somewhere pleasant. Elena did not move. She stood next to a pillar with her suitcase beside her, and she watched. Linda appeared next, pulling a small rolling bag, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She was wearing a linen shirt and white pants. Vacation clothes. Behind her was Courtney, also in casual resort wear, holding 2 iced coffees and talking on her phone. And then, coming around the corner from the family restroom, Robert's niece and nephew, 7 and 9, both carrying small backpacks with cartoon characters, both wearing the bright, buzzing energy of children about to board a plane to somewhere exciting. Robert stopped and crouched down to adjust his nephew's backpack strap. He smiled, not the mechanical smile Elena saw at home, a real one, open and warm and entirely present. The smile of a man who was exactly where he wanted to be, surrounded by exactly the people he wanted to be surrounded by. Elena counted the bags. 5 rolling suitcases, 2 children's backpacks, a large tote that Linda carried over her shoulder. They were not going to a meeting. They were going on a trip, a family trip, planned in advance, packed in advance, every detail coordinated in advance. And Elena had not been told. She stood behind that pillar for 4 full minutes. She watched them check in at the airline counter. She watched Robert lift one of the suitcases onto the scale. She watched Linda hand over a stack of boarding passes. She watched Courtney take a selfie with the kids in front of the departure board. She watched all of it with the particular stillness of a woman whose entire understanding of her own life is being quietly and completely rewritten. As she took out her phone and took one photograph, Robert at the counter, smiling, surrounded by his family, with 5 suitcases and 2 backpacked children and a boarding pass to a destination Elena had not been told about, wearing the jacket she had given him for Christmas. She looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she put the phone in her bag. She picked up her suitcase. She walked to the taxi rank. She gave the driver her address. She sat in the back seat and looked out the window and said nothing for the entire ride. She did not cry. She felt something move through her that was not grief and was not anger. It was something colder and more precise than both. It was the feeling of a blueprint being pulled from a wall. The feeling of understanding, fully and finally, that the building she had spent 9 years constructing had never been her home. She had been the foundation. She had been the plumbing and the wiring and the insulation. But she had never been invited to live inside the rooms. Part 4. The house. The house smelled like lavender when she walked in. Not the lavender from the reed diffuser she kept in the hallway. A different one. A candle. Expensive. Something someone had brought or been given. It was on the coffee table in the living room, half burned, the wax pooled unevenly, which meant it had been lit for several hours. Beside it was a wine glass with a ring of red at the bottom. One glass. No coaster. The coaster was in the drawer where Elena kept them because Robert never remembered to use one. She walked through the living room, into the kitchen. On the counter was a takeaway container from a Thai restaurant she did not recognize. Not their usual place. A new one. Beside it, a receipt. She picked it up. Dinner for 2. Ordered 3 nights ago. She went upstairs. In the bedroom, the bed was made, but not the way she made it. The pillows were in the wrong order. The duvet was pulled up, but not tucked. She opened Robert's closet. Several hangers were empty. The linen shirts, the khaki shorts, the sandals he only wore on beach trips. All gone. Bertie was at the neighbor's. Elena knew this because the neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Odom, had texted her 2 days ago. Just checking. Robert asked me to watch Bertie for the week. Hope your conference is going well. Elena had read the text and assumed Robert was working long hours. She had not asked follow-up questions. She had trusted him. That was the last time. She brought Bertie home. She fed her. She sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet and the dog's head in her lap, and she breathed. She did not call Robert. She did not text him. She did not look at the photograph again. She sat on the floor, and she breathed, and she thought with the kind of clarity that only arrives when everything else has been stripped away. 9 years. 9 years of managing every detail of a household that treated her like staff. 9 years of being the only person who knew the Wi-Fi password, the alarm code, the lawn service schedule, the name of the dog's veterinarian, the expiration date on the home insurance policy. 9 years of being the person who made Christmas happen, who remembered birthdays, who sent thank you cards on behalf of a family that excluded her from its own vacation plans. She sat on that floor for a long time. Then she stood up. She washed the wine glass that was not hers. She threw away the takeaway container. She put the lavender candle in the trash. She wiped the counter. She straightened the living room. She made the bed properly. Then she opened her laptop and began making a list. Part 5. The Return. Robert came home 6 days later. He walked through the front door with his suitcase and his suntan and the particular energy of a man who has been relaxed for a week and is not yet ready to stop being relaxed. He dropped his bag in the hallway. He called out her name. Elena was in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table with a cup of tea and a folder. She had been sitting there for 20 minutes, waiting, not nervously, patiently, the way you wait for an appointment you have already prepared for. There she is, Robert said. He walked into the kitchen with his arms open for a hug. He was still wearing the green field jacket. He smelled like sunscreen and airplane. Elena did not stand up. How was Denver? He asked. He opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and leaned against the counter. He was smiling, the easy, unconcerned smile of a man who believed his lie had held. Denver was fine, Elena said. How was the Henderson meeting? Long, boring. You know how those things go. But productive, I think. We might close the Briar Creek deal by the end of the quarter. Which day was the Henderson meeting? Elena asked. Robert unscrewed the cap of the water bottle. Thursday, I think. Maybe Wednesday. They all blend together. The one that ran over when I landed, Elena said. The one that kept you from picking me up at the airport. A pause. Small. Almost invisible. But Elena had been married to this man for 9 years, and she knew the exact length of his genuine pauses, and this one was half a second too long. Right, he said. That one. Yeah, it ran late. I told you. I felt terrible about it. Elena picked up her tea. She took a sip. She set it back down. She looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Not anger. Not sadness. Something flatter and more final than both. The expression of a woman who has already made her decision and is now simply completing the formality of informing the other party. I was at the airport, Robert. I know. That is why I told you to take a taxi. No, I was at the airport when you were at the airport. The water bottle stopped halfway to his mouth. I was standing in the arrivals hall. You were in the departures concourse. You were wearing the green jacket I bought you for Christmas. Your mother was behind you with a rolling bag. Courtney was carrying 2 iced coffees. The children had cartoon backpacks. You had 5 suitcases checked at the counter. The kitchen was very quiet. Bertie was lying on her bed in the corner. The refrigerator hummed. You called me baby on the phone, Elena said. You told me you were stuck in a meeting. You told me to grab a taxi. And you were standing in the same building I was standing in, checking in for a family vacation that you did not tell me about. That you planned without me. That you packed for without me noticing because I was in another city, trusting you. Robert set the water bottle on the counter. His expression moved through several phases in quick succession. Surprise, then calculation, then the beginning of something that might have been denial, and then a hard stop when he looked at her face and understood that denial had no runway here. Elena, it was not like that. Tell me what it was like. My mom planned it. She booked the whole thing. It was a last-minute family thing. She wanted to take the kids somewhere, and it just came together fast. And I did not think about. You did not think about me. That is not what I said. That is exactly what you said. You just said it with more words. He ran his hand over his face. I should have told you. I know that. It was stupid, but it was not meant to hurt you. 9 years, Robert. Her voice did not rise. It did not waver. It carried across the kitchen with the clean, measured weight of a sentence that had been written and rewritten in her head for 6 days. 9 years I have managed this house, this marriage, your finances, your family's birthdays, your dog's vet appointments, your insurance, your taxes, your entire life. I have been the person who makes everything work, and I have done it so well that you forgot I was doing it. And the one time I leave for 12 days, the one time I am not here to manage and organize and anticipate and adjust, you do not fall apart. You go on vacation. You go on vacation without me, with the family that has spent 9 years making me feel like a guest in my own marriage. And you lie to me about it from the same building I'm standing in. She opened the folder on the table. I have spoken to a lawyer, she said. These are the financial records for the last 3 years. I have documented the household expenses, the accounts I manage, the assets in both our names. I'm not trying to make this ugly. I'm trying to make it honest. Robert stared at the folder. Elena, come on. You are blowing this out of proportion. It was a trip. A week. My mom paid for the whole thing. This is not about the trip, Robert. The trip is just the photograph. The marriage is the album. She stood up. She picked up her tea. She poured the rest of it into the sink. She set the cup down and turned to face him. I am leaving, she said. Not because of a vacation. Because I've spent 9 years being essential and invisible at the same time. And I am done being both. She walked past him. She walked upstairs. She pulled the olive green suitcase from the wardrobe and began pack. Robert followed her. He stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed, cycling between guilt and indignation like a man spinning a dial and landing on whichever emotion required the least accountability. So that is it. 9 years, and you're just walking out. Elena folded a sweater and placed it in the suitcase. You walked out 6 days ago, Robert. You just did it with a boarding pass. Part 6. The Collapse. Elena moved into her brother Marcus's spare room that night. She took Bertie. She took the suitcase. She took the folder. She left behind 9 years of invisible labor, and a man who was about to discover what that labor had been worth. The first thing that broke was the Wi-Fi. Not immediately. 3 days after Elena left, the auto pay for the internet service failed. The payment was linked to Elena's card, the card attached to the household account she had managed since year 2. When her card was deactivated during the financial separation, the payment bounced. The internet went out on a Monday morning. Robert called the provider. He was on hold for 53 minutes. He did not know the account number. He did not know the security question. He did not know the email address associated with the account, because it was the household email that Elena had set up and managed for 7 years, and he had never once logged into. The provider could not help him without verification. He hung up. He sat at the kitchen table and stared at his phone with no Wi-Fi and no idea how to fix it. The second thing was the dog. Bertie was with Elena, but the dog's records, the vaccination history, the vet's contact information, the medication schedule for the joint supplement Bertie took every morning were all in Elena's system. The vet called Robert's number for Bertie's annual checkup reminder. Robert did not know the vet. He had never taken a dog to the vet. He did not know Bertie was on a joint supplement. When he called Elena to ask, she told him, calmly and without malice, that Bertie was with her now and the vet records were handled. You took the dog? Robert said. I take care of the dog, Robert. I have always taken care of the dog. You wanted a dog. I kept the dog alive. The third thing was the lawn. The service Elena had booked came on the first and third Tuesday of every month. The payment was on auto draft from the household account. When the account was frozen during the separation, the service stopped. Robert did not notice for 3 weeks. By then, the front yard looked like a small meadow. Mrs. Odom next door left a polite note in the mailbox about neighborhood standards. Robert read it, balled it up, and threw in the trash. Then he spent 90 minutes trying to start the lawn mower, which he had never used. It would not start because it needed fuel stabilizer and new spark plug, both of which Elena had ordered and replaced herself every spring. The fourth thing was the furnace. The annual inspection was scheduled for October. Elena had always booked it in August, before the slots filled up. She had not booked it this year because she had left in September. Robert did not know the furnace needed an annual inspection. He did not know the name of the company. He did not know that skipping the inspection voided the warranty on the unit, which had been replaced 4 years ago at a cost he had never asked about because Elena had handled it. The fifth thing was Thanksgiving. Linda called Robert in early November with a menu she wanted him to prepare. She had always called Elena for this, but Elena was no longer answering calls from Linda. So Linda called Robert and rattled off a list of dishes, cooking times, grocery needs, and serving arrangements that Robert listened to with the dawning horror of a man who has just been handed the controls of an aircraft and does not know how to fly. Mom, I did not know how to make a honey glazed ham. Elena always made it. Just do what she did. I did not know what she did. A pause. The particular pause of a woman who is beginning to realize that the person she dismissed for 9 years was the only reason her holidays functioned. Well, Linda said, figure it out. Robert did not figure it out. Thanksgiving was a store-bought rotisserie chicken, boxed mashed potatoes, and a silence at the table that was louder than any argument. The sixth thing was the bills. Not one bill. All of them. They arrived in sequence, like a line of dominoes that had been held in place by a single finger, and the finger had been removed. Mortgage, insurance, property tax, water, electric, trash service, car registration renewal. Every payment date, every account number, every login credential had lived inside Elena's system. Robert had never built a system. He had never needed to. He had lived inside hers. Within 4 months, there were late fees on 3 accounts, a lapsed car registration, a home insurance policy that had been canceled for non-payment, and a property tax notice with a red stamp on it that Robert opened at the kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night with a glass of bourbon and an expression that Courtney, who had stopped by unannounced and found him there, described later to Linda as like he had seen his own ghost. Part 7. The Woman Who Left. Elena did not watch any of this happen. She did not need to. She knew the architecture she had built, and she knew what would happen without maintenance. She did not take pleasure in it. She was not vengeful. She was simply gone, and gone was enough. She stayed at Marcus's for 6 weeks. She found an apartment on the 4th floor of a building in the Arts District. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen with good light, and a balcony that caught the morning sun. She put a table and 2 chairs on the balcony, and a potted rosemary plant she had started from a cutting she took from the herb garden at the house before she left. The rosemary was doing well. It had put out new growth within 2 weeks. She went back to work full-time. She was promoted within 3 months, not because of the divorce, not out of sympathy, but because she was, as she had always been, exceptionally good at what she did. Her supervisor told her she was being considered for a senior operations role. Elena said she was interested. She was. She had always been interested. She had just been too busy managing someone else's life to manage her own career. She reconnected with old colleagues. She enrolled in a leadership certification program that met on Saturday mornings. She took Bertie to a new vet near the apartment, a young woman named Dr. Chun who remembered Bertie's name between visits and gave Elena her direct number in case of emergencies. She cooked dinner for herself every night. Not elaborate meals. Simple ones. Pasta with fresh herbs from the balcony. A roasted chicken on Sundays. She ate at the small table by the window with Bertie at her feet, and the particular, specific pleasure of a woman who is feeding herself for the first time in 9 years. Marcus came by on Wednesday evenings. They ate together and talked the way they had talked when they were kids, before marriages and mortgages and the slow accumulation of responsibilities that buries the people you used to be. Marcus never asked Elena if she was okay. He could see that she was. He asked her what she was working on instead, and she told him, and the telling felt like breathing. Part 8. Robert's last attempt. The call came on a Saturday morning in late January. Elena was on the balcony with her coffee and her certification textbook, Bertie asleep in the sunlight at her feet. Her phone buzzed. Robert's name on the screen. She almost did not answer. She looked at the name for 3 full rings. Then she picked up. Elena. His voice was different. Flatter. Quieter. The bravado was gone. The smooth, rehearsed quality that had lived in his voice for as long as she had known him had been stripped away, and what was left sounded like a man sitting in a room he did not know how to leave. Robert, I need to talk to you. You can talk to me through the lawyers. Not about the legal stuff. About us. About the house. About what happened. Elena took a sip of her coffee. She looked at the rosemary plant on the table. It had new growth again this week. Tiny bright green leaves at the tips of every branch. There is no us, Robert. There is a legal process, and it is being handled. I know I messed up. I know the airport thing was bad. I know I should have told you about the trip. But 9 years, Elena. We built something. I built something, Elena said. Her voice was not sharp. It was precise. The difference between a knife and a scalpel. I built the house. I built the systems. I built the schedule and the budget and the relationships with the neighbors and the holiday meals and the vet appointments and every single piece of infrastructure that made your life look like it worked. You lived in what I built. That is not the same as building it. A silence. My mother wants to talk to you, Robert said. No. She says she wants to apologize. She wants access. There's a difference. Your mother has never apologized to me in 9 years. She is not going to start now because the furnace warranty is voided and nobody knows how to book the inspection. Another silence. Longer. Courtney asked if you could send her the recipe for the honey glazed ham. Elena almost laughed. She caught it before it became sound, but she felt in her chest a sharp, bright flash of something that was not humor but lived next door to it. The audacity. The staggering, unself-aware audacity of a family that had excluded her from its own vacation and was now asking her for a recipe. Courtney can Google it, Elena said. The same way I learned it 9 years ago when your mother told me it was my responsibility and nobody offered to help. Elena, please. I'm not angry, Robert. I want you to hear that. I'm not doing this out of anger or revenge. I am doing this because I spent 9 years being the most important person in a house where I was treated like the least important person. I was the engine and the fuel and the mechanic, and everyone rode in the car and complained about the noise without ever once opening the hood. She paused. You call me controlling, she said. You told your mother I was difficult. You told Courtney I was sensitive. You told yourself that the structure I built around your life was a cage instead of scaffold. And then you went on vacation without me and lied about it to my face from 20 meters away. I know. I do not need you to know. I need you to live with it. That is not a punishment. That is just what happens when the person who held everything together puts everything down. She hung up. She set the phone face down on the table. She looked at the street below, at the Saturday morning moving through it. A couple walking a small white dog. A man carrying a paper bag from the bakery on the corner. A child on a scooter, weaving between the sidewalk cracks. Bertie lifted her head, looked at Elena, and put her head back down. Elena picked up her textbook and continued reading. Part 9. Linda calls. Linda's voicemail arrived 2 weeks later. Elena listened to it once, standing in her kitchen, chopping rosemary for a chicken she was roasting for dinner. Elena, sweetheart, this is Linda. I have been thinking about you, and I just want you to know that I have always considered you family. I know things have been difficult, and I want you to know that I never meant to make you feel excluded. We are all family here, and families go through rough patches. I would love to sit down with you and talk, woman to woman. Robert misses you, sweetheart. We all do. Call me when you get a chance. Elena listened to the whole thing. She set the phone on the counter. She continued chopping rosemary. She did not call back. She did not call back because she had heard that voice for 9 years. She knew its registers. She knew the warm, honeyed tone Linda used when she wanted something and the cooler, flatter tone she used when she was speaking honestly. The voicemail was the warm one, the performance one. The voice of a woman who had realized that the person she had dismissed was the load-bearing wall of her son's entire existence. And she was not calling to apologize. She was calling to rebuild the wall. Elena sent the voicemail to her lawyer. The lawyer sent a formal communication to Robert's legal team requesting that all contact go. Final. 2 days later, Courtney posted a photo on social media. Robert in the kitchen, surrounded by dishes, a failed attempt at something that might have been a casserole. Courtney had captioned it with 3 laughing emojis and the words, "Someone needs to take a cooking class." Elena saw the post. She looked at it for exactly 4 seconds. She noted the dishes in the sink, the smoke stain on the ceiling above the stove, and the particular exhaustion on Robert's face that she recognized immediately because she had felt it herself for 9 years. Except nobody had ever photographed her in the middle of it and turned it into a joke. She closed the app. She calmed down and finished cooking her dinner. Part 10. The balcony. Spring arrived. The rosemary plant on Elena's balcony had tripled in size. She had started a basil plant beside it, and a small pot of thyme. The balcony was becoming a garden. The apartment was becoming a home. She completed the leadership certification. She was offered the senior operations role at her firm. She accepted. The salary was almost double what she had been earning, and the work was the kind of work she had always wanted to do. Strategic, structural, the kind of work where you build systems that make things run, except now she was being paid for it, and credited for it, and respected for it. Marcus came by on a Wednesday evening in April. They ate pasta on the balcony. Bertie lay between their chairs, her golden fur catching the last of the evening light. Robert's firm lost the Briar Creek deal, Marcus said. He said it neutrally, the way you report weather. I heard, Elena said. Courtney called me asking if you would be willing to consult. Apparently, the new property manager Robert hired is not working out, and they were wondering if you might help restructure his home office systems. Elena set her fork down. She looked at her brother. She waited for the punchline. It did not come. They want me to come back and organize his life for him, she said. As a consultant, that appears to be the request. Elena picked up her wine glass. She took a slow sip. She looked out at the street below. The evening was warm. The air smelled like cut grass and someone's barbecue from a floor below. No, she said. I figured. Not because I am bitter. Because I am finished. I spent 9 years being his infrastructure. I'm not going to do it as a side job. Marcus nodded. He twirled his fork in the pasta. You seem good, he said. I am good, Elena said. And she meant it. Not performing it. Not almost meaning it. Actually meaning it. With her whole self. The way she had not been able to mean anything fully for 9 years because so much of herself had been allocated to maintaining someone else. Part 11. The photograph. That night, after Marcus left, Elena sat on the balcony alone. Bertie was asleep inside. The street was quiet. The evening had turned cool, and she had wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, the blue one she had bought herself the week she moved in, the first thing she had bought that was only for her. She opened her phone. She scrolled back through her photos until she found it. The one she had taken at the airport. Robert at the check-in counter. The green jacket. The 5 suitcases. Linda behind him. Courtney with the iced coffees. The children with their cartoon backpacks. The departure board glowing above them. She looked at it for a long time. She studied Robert's face, the smile, the ease, the openness she had not seen directed at her in years. She studied Linda's posture, the ownership, the comfort of a woman surrounded by the people she had chosen. She studied Courtney's phone held high for the selfie, the casual, unreflective joy of someone who had never once considered who was missing from the frame. She had kept this photograph for 5 months. She had looked at it in the first weeks with something close to rage. She had looked at it in the middle months with something closer to grief. She looked at it now and felt something she had not expected. She felt finished. Not finished with anger, because the anger had already gone. Not finished with grief, because the grief had settled into a quieter place where it no longer demanded attention. Finished with the photograph itself. Finished with the evidence. Finished with needing proof that she had been wronged, because the proof was no longer necessary. She knew what had happened. She knew what she had built, and what she had lost, and what she had rebuilt. She did not need a photograph to remind her. She pressed delete. The phone asked her to confirm. She confirmed. The photograph disappeared. The screen returned to her camera roll, to the newer photos, the ones from the last 5 months. The rosemary plant in its first week. Bertie on the new apartment floor. The view from the balcony at sunrise. A selfie with Marcus at his birthday dinner, both of them laughing. The certificate from her leadership course, framed and hanging on her office wall. She closed the phone. She sat on the table. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and listened to the night. She thought about the airport, not the betrayal, the clarity. The moment she had stood in that terminal with her olive green suitcase and watched the entire lie laid out in front of her like a map. And instead of collapsing, instead of screaming, instead of running across the concourse and making a scene, she had taken a photograph, put the phone in her bag, and walked to the taxi rank. She had gone home. She had made a list. She had called a lawyer. She had packed her suitcase. And she had left. Not with fireworks. Not with revenge. With her suitcase and her dog, and her clarity and herself. The rosemary plant rustled slightly in the evening breeze. Bertie shifted in her sleep inside the apartment. A car passed on the street below, its headlights sweeping briefly across the building opposite before continuing into the dark. Elena sat in her chair, in her blanket, in her life, and felt the particular, irreplaceable freedom of a woman who has finally stopped carrying what was never hers to carry. Whose hands are empty now? Whose hands are ready now? Whose hands are building, at last, exactly what they were always meant to build? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not fight, not scream, not expose, not retaliate, Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remove yourself from a system that could not function without you and let the silence speak louder than anything you could ever say. Elena did not need revenge. She needed room. And the airport, the place where it all cracked open, turned out to be exactly where the room began. If patience, so the next one finds you the moment it drops. We will see you there.